to the volunteers and to Lois and her team that are making this venue so festive. It's like a wedding, isn't it? Did you find it? It's amazing. So I think you all have a pamphlet on the table that explains a little bit about myself, and I'm very honoured to be here today to speak with you about a few things. I'm hoping we'll have a few laughs as well. As you know from that information sheet, I've worked for over 20 years in palliative care, and I've learned not to say that at parties because people shy away from you. And I've also been in private practice as a psychotherapist, so that means you counsel and you help people with psychological and emotional issues, and that's the topic that I'm going to hopefully touch on today. So I've come to see that the people that I deal with are really heroes in their own right. They have multiple issues, and I often remind myself they are heroes with what they're tackling, and I think we'll see a few of those here today. So it's a real honour, I feel, to assist people in a small or large way when they are confronting major life changes or big crises in their lives, and that can vary from children being diagnosed with autism to parents that are separating, or people being diagnosed with cancer, or people having to assist someone with cancer. I just want to ask, by a show of hands, and I'd like you to look around when this happens, how many people have been touched by cancer in this room today? Can I have a look? And touched, that means either have had it or have assisted friends. I think we have more hands going up when we look at that last bit. So that tells you something, how widespread it is. I've also worked in community nursing with the district nursing, and when I started 20 years ago, it was 1 in 8 people that were diagnosed with cancer. And when I left it a couple of months ago, it was 1 in 4. So it really is quite concerning, and I'll talk a little bit more about that in a minute. That's a bit of a serious tone here. I'm so happy to be here. I can't tell you how happy I am to be here, because this is where my journey into Australia started. 40 years ago, my husband and I, we came overland, a long trip, and ended up here in Mount Gambier. We both worked here, and our first 2 children were born in the hospital here. So it's greatly sentimental to come back here and to see the greenery today. It's uplifting. Also confusing at times. When we first came here, there were a lot of things that were very puzzling to me. And one that comes to mind is we lived in a government house, and next door was a family, and the husband was very friendly, and so was the wife, but one day he came over and he totally bamboozled me. He knocked on the door and asked, "Is your husband home?" I didn't know, and I said, "No, he's not home." And he said, "I was just wondering if I could come in and have a look at your knickknacks." Now, I didn't know if that was an indecent proposal. But luckily, he pointed at the knickknacks that we had in the window on display. Congratulations, you've just lifted your serotonin and your endorphins. Doing well. So, also in Mount Gambier, we had a lot of really lovely friends and family that was here. And the colleagues that we had were very welcoming. And I see the same spirit here, the spirit of community, that interestingly enough now is seen on the indicators of good health as much more important as exercise, as diet, as intellectual stimulation. Actually, that sense of community, that's what is the key indicator to good health, good mental health, but also good physical health. So you're all doing well again, getting good points here today. So I wanted to talk about self-care, because that's a really important issue, particularly for people who are going through cancer, but also for people who are assisting people in cancer, because some of these trajectories, when one is diagnosed with cancer, and that moment of diagnosis is quite an important moment in someone's life. And when we used to do assessments in district nursing, that was often a moment where someone would break down. That day when I went to the doctor and they told me I had cancer of some kind, is a moment where the grief is deeply, deeply felt, because you have to let go of the notion that you're a healthy individual and you're on a tour. So good self-care is taking time to pause. It's time to breathe. It's time to be with nature. It's one of the most important contributions that we can give to ourselves, is to be with nature, whether that's walking or watching the sea that endlessly comes and goes. And it's also using your senses, your feelings, your smell, there's a beautiful smell in this room as well. Just a feeling of community that is here today. All those things are very good for self-care. Music, creativity expressed through poetry. Often when people are diagnosed with cancer, they write the most amazing stories about their lives. It's very therapeutic for them, but it's also very therapeutic for other people to read. And it's also beautiful to read some of the poetry that they have written that expresses their experience. So I guess in terms of self-care, the most important thing is to let go of criticism of self, negative thoughts, competitiveness, and self-judgment. We'll come back to that a bit later. So more and more people are touched by cancer, as I already said, and surprisingly, one of the biggest surprises was the ability of people to be of assistance to each other. The numerous people that I've seen that were separated from their partners in the earliest stages in their lives, and then when the partner was diagnosed with cancer and dying, and I talk about women particularly, they would come in and help. It was almost surprising to think that they would have had lots of conflict and issues before, and end of life, there was this ex-partner looking after this husband again. It's almost like an experience I've had recently with my brother-in-law dying, who I had a few issues with at times. You start to relate more to the essence of the person. All those little ego battles and struggles that we have, they're put to the side, and you relate more to the essence, just as you do when you hold a newborn baby or a baby. There's no struggles yet. So, I guess one of the other parts, and this is the second topic that I was going to talk about, is that what is really helpful in self-care is to develop, and this is a very modern concept, self-compassion. It's on my pamphlet as well. And self-compassion is not, I know a lot of grey nomads might talk about, this me generation with social media, they're all so highly preoccupied with themselves. That's not what I mean, not this me generation. Self-compassion relates not to the ego, but relates to something deeper within ourselves. Something that has to do with being kind and supportive to ourselves. For example, one of the things that struck me when I worked in palliative care is that when people get diagnosed, often there's that incredible hurry to do something, problem solve this, what can we do, what's the treatment? And what they found, actually, that when we pause and just say, gee, this is an incredible message I'm receiving today, I might need to stop for a moment and be kind to myself and invite support rather than straight away rush and do things. Because that rushing often leads 6 months down the track to depression. And people might say, so why does that happen to me now? Because they didn't take the time to absorb and process this new information. I see a few people nodding. I think you understand what I'm talking about. Cancer can also bring some new things to people. One, for example, that I've noticed is that for us women, we are so conditioned to be caring, to look after others, to give beyond what we are capable of. Sometimes people that are diagnosed with cancer find that for the first time they can say, no, I won't come, or no, I can't help, or I can't spend money on that, or I'll have that massage instead of going to assist my friends with cleaning her house. So those are actually interesting components to the whole diagnosis of cancer, because we may not know exactly what causes cancer. The multifactorial illness as it's called. But stress certainly has a lot to do with it. And that stress of demanding so much of ourselves, for us women who are so serviceable and so giving often, but often not for ourselves. That's what I've been finding. So it can be the first time indeed, as I said, where they may say, no, I can't do that. So that's good. There's also other lessons, of course, maybe of self-forgiveness or letting go of guilt or finally making that phone call that would be put off, that has been put off. Like my dear friend Meg sent in a message 2 days ago, it's been tough, but it's been a gift I wouldn't have wanted to miss for the world. She'd been diagnosed at 39 with melanoma. So there's good and bad things, isn't it? The other part to that is that often people rush out and do things, but just that feeling of togetherness like that you have here today, being present with each other, it's often underrated. We come up with, oh, maybe you need to see the naturopath, or maybe you need to try that new remedy. I read something in America that you could do. Race out all these incredible problem-solving like things, forgetting that just being with someone and maybe touching them is equally important for that person to feel the expression of love and to feel that support in order to go through the journey. I want to tell you a funny story. Can I? I've noticed recently when people come to our house, they ask for stories, so I'm developing the knack of storytelling. Indulge me for a moment. We have a place on Kangaroo Island, and we regularly go there for self-care. And in the local community that we live there, there's a local shop, and they advertise that they have the best whiting burgers. I'm not sure about that, but it's a very interesting community, again, with that community spirit. And in the village, the shop has been on the market for 8 years and still not sold. That's a bit of a tradition there. So what the local community has done is they have put up the proposal that all people will work together and man the shop. So one day I was there. I often go there not to buy anything, but just to observe what's going on, because it's hilarious. And I'm standing behind this German couple, immaculately dressed, with matching jackets. And you know how those people who have their jeans ironed? Two of them. And I'm standing behind them, and I speak German, and I can hear it as well. And so this man says to John, who was the current person on duty, can I please hire the boards for sandboarding next door? Next door is the White Sahara where you can slide down with those boards. And John says, yeah. And he says, and how much is it, please? Oh, $20. So he says, he gives the $20. And as he does that, his wife comes from behind and she says, she's found a little trinket. And she says, ask him how much this is, I want to buy it. So the gentleman says, how much is this, please? And John says, and you know how Australians can mumble, I still haven't got that out figured out. Oh, thank you for taking it off our hands. So the German man straightens up and says to his wife, I think it's very expensive. So she says, please ask again. I want to know, it's really special. So he asks again, and he gets the same answer. Oh, thank you for taking it off our hands. I laughed so much when I saw them walking off, looking perplexed without their little trinket. Okay. I want to talk to you a little bit about self-compassion, and then I'll finish soon with maybe another story. We had a house guest. It was a family member, and she had been on her own. She'd been a widow for a little while. Very, what would I say, very adequate, beautifully dressed, perfect sort of person. A lot of admiration for her, super intelligent, high achieving, all those wonderful qualities. And because she'd been on her own, she was constantly talking to herself. Anyone else does that here? It's actually a good thing. You never have any fights, do you? So she was talking, and frequently I thought, oh, is she talking to me? But she wasn't. What was astounding was that she was incredibly self-critical. She'll say, oh, you stupid woman. Oh, you should have done that. Oh, how late is that? Oh, you need to take that back. Oh, the whole day she was like that. And it really started to sadden me that someone who had reached such a high achievement was having such a low opinion of herself and constantly be mad with herself. Is that the same with you? So we said to her, gee, you're pretty tough on yourself, aren't you? And she said, am I? I don't know. Why? Why do you say that? So we talked to her. Have you listened to yourself, what you say all day? That's part of stress and self-inflicted stress that's actually quite negative. When you look at the stress barometer, there's incidents in people's lives such as, death of a child. I think that rate's very high, or a missing person, so there's no resolution, or being diagnosed with cancer. Of course, they rank high as incidents. But the stress itself is highly felt when we have a conflict within ourselves. It's like a grinding that goes on within ourselves. That's actually producing a lot of cortisol, which is a stress hormone, or adrenaline. So my message to you today is, for your own mental health, try and inflict less stress on yourself in that manner. Take the conflict out. Be supportive of yourself, like you do to a friend. So there's been a lot of research done in this whole self-compassion industry, if you want to call it that. And there's a professor in London called Paul Gilbert who's talked about this in depth. And he says that in the brain there's 3 emotional centers. One is for survival, which is the fight and flight and freeze. And lately they've discovered, with women mainly, a gathering. So that fight, flight and freeze, but gathering is everyone here. If there's a fire in the building, women will often find, is everyone here? That fight and flight is really important for our survival. Our blood pressure raises, our pupil enlarges. All those responses are very physical, but they're also very much keeping us on a very high stress level. We need that in life when we're in danger. But it seems like we don't know quite how to switch that off. Some would say that that's one of the reasons why anxiety is raising in our community. I do think that's true. And then the second center that he talked about is the motivational one, the intelligent one, where you just propel yourself forward. It's not overly anxious, it's just to achieve things. And then the third center that he talked about, and this is the one that has to do with self-compassion, is the center from which we cultivate contentment. We praise or we soothe ourselves. Now that's the one that is very difficult for us to achieve, because we are competitive. We're mostly in that mode of trying to work with other people and get our things done. So that's really important, that third center. So I'll do an exercise at the end with you that hopefully will help you to feel that a bit. So then there's another lady called Christine Neff who's also done a lot of research into what is compassion and why is it so difficult to be compassionate for ourselves, while most people are incredibly compassionate to others. And her research indicated that it has to do with the culture. We don't want to be seen as whinging, or we don't want to be seen as having self-pity, woe's me, can't do that. That's not what I'm talking about. It's being compassionate, being kind to yourself. You know how you say to a friend, dear, you're going through a lot, aren't you? That sort of self-talk is really to do with self-compassion. Now, her research suggests, and this really surprised me, that in the time before, where we did a lot of support for each other, but also especially for children in school, in cultivating self-esteem. You're good, you're the best, you get a gold star, you win this match, you're very good. She says, in her research, it seems that attitude of praising others and really cultivating that competitiveness and enhancing that feeling of you're very good almost exaggerating, I think, sometimes. I was recently on a flight and I showed the air hostess my flight number and she said, "Awesome!" What's awesome about showing a piece of paper? Get a bit overboard with that sort of stuff. So she says that industry of self-esteem has created a lot of egotism, a lot of self-centeredness, and a lot of me feelings, which she calls narcissism. Narcissism being preoccupied with ourselves. That's not what is helpful with self-compassion. It's not to stimulate you to become more competitive. It's to actually to be supportive and kind to yourself. So, one of the exercises that she said is that if you are struggling, is to first of all accept that life does produce suffering. It's inevitable, isn't it? And not to feel like you've been cheated or something has gone wrong or it's an injustice. Suffering is part of life. And just like we absorb happiness and we absorb kindness, we also need to accept sometimes that, gee, this is a chapter of suffering for me. And to maybe trust that deep within us we have whatever is needed to handle that. So this emotion of self-confidence is connected to self-compassion. I see a few people nodding, right? So, in order to become more self-compassionate, she suggests that we write a letter to ourselves sometimes, as if we were another person. Dear, dear, what are you going through is quite difficult. I can see that this is a struggle for you. But one day you'll come through this. Doesn't mean that you trivialize the suffering, you don't belittle it, but you actually accept that there is such a thing as suffering. So, self-compassion is not judgmental. It's being kind and understanding and supportive towards self. The deeper self, that kernel within, eternal. My Italian teacher used to say, calm, calm, we're in eternity. God, how helpful is that sometimes? Just that, that big expanded thinking, isn't it? We get so preoccupied with the moment. But to just be kind and understanding to self. Secondly, to see that in all aspects in life there's a commonality in humanity. We all suffer, we all struggle, we all bewildered at times, just like I was with the man with the knickknacks. And to give away that idea that we're separate. We are not all that separate from others. If you really want to experience that, go on a grey nomad trip like I have. You all wear a little tag to go to the toilet and to go under the shower. It's all the same, really. We're all the same, in essence. So, and that commonality will often result, that feeling of commonality will often result in what you're doing today, to be together as a community, to enhance things in the community. I'm sure the mayor will agree with me. That's the most important thing of building a healthy community, to have that commonality. And the third thing that she suggests is the need to be mindful. Now, who hasn't heard about that word mindfulness? Everyone talks about mindfulness, right? Mindfulness comes from the Buddhist tradition, and in the Buddhist tradition they talk about being in the moment, experiencing that moment as the only one that you have. So being super involved right now with what you're doing. A good example of that is sometimes when you're doing something that you really love, you look up and you think, oh my goodness, what's the time? You got so absorbed in what you were doing. And they talk about that activities like that, they reset your computer. They restart you, they reboot you, they make you very healthy and happy. So it's good for mental health, your self-compassion. A little enemy of self-compassion is what they call wild exaggeration, being lost in your own soap opera. And I was really aware of that when I worked in recovery. And people would come out of theatre and they would yell already, oh, this is the worst pain I've ever had in my life. You knew you had to get the morphine ready, big time. Because that self-talk of saying, oh, it's never been this bad, or it's always like that, that creates the drama and the soap opera that I was just mentioning before. So clearly seeing things as they are, no more, no less, recognizing that pain and suffering is part of life, it's not a defeat, and you'll find the strength to deal with it. Don't say that to people who've just heard the worst news, by the way. You might get a slap. And love is not a commodity that we're entitled to. Love is something that we need to work for. And it's interesting because love and compassion is not written up in psychology. It's not a provable thing. So much of psychology is now about research. You can't really prove that. So, are you ready for a little experiment? Are you? Don't be shy. I'm not going to ask you to yodel. So take a decision that you're going to create some happy hormones now. Are you willing to do this experiment? Actually, I find that a really interesting notion. Instead of saying, I'm doing life very seriously, to just say, hey, it's an experiment. Why not give it a go? So that's what I'm asking you to do. So I'm asking you to just take a moment to breathe. Maybe turn onto your own little patch there on your lap, where you have now. And just put your left hand where you think your heart is. Physically do that. Hello, heart. Feel kind thoughts as you say that. And then I'm going to ask you something that you've all done before and you've all seen happening many times. The other arm you put on the opposite arm. Yes? And you stroke it up and down gently. I'm sure you've seen that at funerals when people want to encourage each other. They go, hey, it's okay. So apparently, after 15 seconds for females, we produce oxytocin. That's the soothing, happy hormone. And for men, there's a slight delay. Sorry. 30 seconds. Nevertheless, yeah. I think you all did that pretty well. Really. So sometimes when you get carried away with anxiety, like I did yesterday, I couldn't find my keys. Right, okay, just take a moment. Mostly you forget, don't you? Those moments you should do, but you forget. Okay, now, I want to finish off with Lo's favourite joke. May I?
Lo's favourite joke. Oh my God.
She laughed yesterday, so I'll try it with you. When we first came to Mount Gambier, one of my husband's colleagues, young colleagues, invited us to a surprise birthday party. I had never experienced anything like that. So the invitation said, please bring a plate. Please bring a plate. I think you know where this is going, don't you? So, help for me, I brought 4 empty plates. Thinking, this couple has just set up, they don't have plates. So I sat in the kitchen and I saw all the Aussies coming in with bowls of salad and snacks and nuts, and I was thinking, oh, that's what that means. But I was reassured, no one actually said anything nasty to me. So Mount Gambier and Australia has been wonderful for us. And I want to thank you all for coming today. And I hope you go with the last experiment. Have we got time for that? One little experiment? Okay. Be quick. Be quick, she says. Can you be quick? Okay.
No, he's telling me.
This is called laughter therapy. Who's heard about that? Yeah. You know, if you laugh, you produce, again, the happy hormones. This is my mission for today. I want you to be happy when you leave here. So what I'm going to ask you to do is you can sit down and you're going to laugh about me. I went to the Philippines, actually, some time ago, and I did that with the people in the village. There were over 100 people in the village. And I'm sure they didn't laugh as much with the experiment as afterwards when I walked away. They were all pointing at me and imitating me, and that was the reason for them to laugh. I hope that doesn't happen today. So put your hands on your lower belly, and I want you to start off with, and you can laugh at me if it doesn't work for you. I want you to do a deep laugh, like a man's, a grandfather's laugh. Ha, 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 ha. Go on. Where's those round voices? You're doing pretty well here. You ready for the next one? hands on your heart. And now laugh as if you normally laugh, an imitation laugh. And now put your hands on kids. And now laugh as if you're a little toddler. All right. So the good news is, I'm sure some of you are faking it just to be good girls. We are always good girls, aren't we, women? Good girls comes with being born as a woman, I reckon. Good girls who laugh, not with the right heart, but who laugh fake, they still produce serotonin and endorphins, all the happy hormones that I wish for you today. Thank you.